Hey guys, welcome to the IMS, welcome to Ibiza.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We see you a lot here, but we don't always see you here, so it's a real pleasure. But I thought it seems like there's a MAW revival going on, but I wanted to kind of get to the roots of that and just get you to talk a little bit, because I don't think we've even done it on my radio show with the two of you together. It's just how you came together, because you're a kind of unlikely coupling, the two different hats, the Latino and the hip-hop guy. So just take us back on a bit of a history lesson of how you met and how you got started and what you were doing, Kenny.
Yeah, well, at the age of 16, I worked at a record store in Brooklyn, and that's where I met Todd Terry. He used to come through and buy music and play us music at that time, and it was the early stages of Masters at Work. I had a crew of guys that we did parties and stuff like that, and as things went on, as the friendship grew, and I watched them make records and stuff. So he was just like, look, I need a name for a group, for a record, and I was like, well, use Masters at Work. So he originally did 2 records on the Floor label, Dum Dum Cry and All Right, as Masters at Work. But it was the Brooklyn crew, and then as time went on, I was starting to put records out on my label Dope Wax. At that same time, him and Louie were working, but it was crazy because he was coming to Brooklyn to the store and hanging with us, but at the same time, he was going to the city to bring Louie his reel-to-reels of new stuff, and actually working with Louie at the same time, So I did a record called A Touch of Salsa, and it turns out that actually Louie liked it and was playing at the club, and he wanted to remix it. So he was like, who's this kid? I've been getting these records or whatever, and then he's like, oh, that's my guy from Brooklyn. He introduced us, and we instantly clicked because, like you said, we're just 2 different people, 2 different styles, 2 different everything, And we just hit it off from very, very beginning. At that same point, Louie had a deal on Atlantic Records and was working with Mark Anthony. So he said, come into the studio, and the rest is pretty much history. We just, like I said, we clicked. It was instant. I was kind of amazed of the board and all the big stuff, because at home we was on a 4-track and an 8-track machine and a drum machine and a sampler and 1 keyboard, and then you go into this huge room with all this equipment, So it was kind of intimidating, but once I got comfortable, we got to it and worked on that record. And then since he was working with Atlantic Records, Debbie Gibson came, and then her boyfriend Chris Cuevas came, and that's how we did those dubs, and that was the beginning of it. You know what I mean?
How did you, before we let you speak, just going back a bit further, you were a hip hop guy though, so how did you get introduced to kind of the world?
Yeah, well, in Brooklyn, it was a melting pot. At that same time, playing hip hop, playing reggae, being at the store. You work at a record store, you got to know about all kinds of music. At that same point, house music came in. So we got all the Trax records from Chicago. We got all the KMS stuff from Detroit, and then we started getting imports as well too. So I became the buyer of the store. So I was buying all these Warp records and FFR and all the labels. So you played everything. It wasn't so much about, I'm going to play one style, or I'm into this or I'm into that. When you did a party, you played across the board. That's what I learned early on. And that's what we brought into our music on the production side as well too.
Louie, who were your inspirations and your kind of heroes right at the beginning? Who there must have been a guy that inspired you to become a DJ. I know you had sisters that were like misbehaved and went out. They were going to the loft, right? I believe.
Yeah. Besides my sisters who went to the loft, the Paradise Garage, and all these clubs, and brought this music home that I loved, that I never heard because it wasn't on the radio. It was the neighborhood. You know, I came from the South Bronx, so there was a lot of my friend's older brother. Let's say he had a lot of break beats. So you know, you go to the block parties, you watch the DJs, and you know, you want to do what they do. You know, you get inspired, and I was trying to extend those breaks. You know, then I had another neighbor who had a big disco collection. So I used to go to his place and borrow his turntables and 2 crates of vinyl, and just practice and listen to all the breaks and you know where the intros, everything of the songs, and just mixing them. So just started doing neighborhood parties, and it grew from there. You know, but those are the inspirations, and of course, I live right where Africa Bambaataa, Jazzy Jay, Red Alert were throwing parties, all the break dances and everything, and it was actually Jazzy Jay who took me under his wing and heard one of my mixtapes.
It seemed to me, I remember first, I mean, you wouldn't, you know, the hip hop world of today doesn't cross over much with our world. I mean, I guess it does in the David Guetta level, and obviously Drake's now cut a record with Black Coffee, but the worlds are quite different. Back then in New York in the late 80s, New Music Seminar, everybody was a little bit closer together, weren't they?
There was no boundaries, you know. Everybody partied together, they went to the club. Like I said, you know, we came up on playing all spectrums, you know, so it bobbed and weaved, and the night grew, and it was breathing, and you broke things down, and then you took a break, and then you played different styles. So it was there, you know. So yeah, we did mesh, you know. Also hip hop meshed with a lot of the alternative stuff and the punk scene, and you know, so those elements came into play as well too, you know, and all the music just gelled, you know.
I mean, Todd Terry, legendary figure who's been involved in the IMS before. I mean, a mentor of yours. What did he teach you back in the day? What do you think the big takeaway you got from working with Todd at the beginning?
It was just a drum machine, you know what I mean? How to take nothing and make something out of it, you know.
What was his kind of weapon of choice?
At first, he had a Casio RZ1, and each pad sampled 1 second. So imagine that, right? 1 second. So, and then he had a Korg sampler that sampled 4 seconds. So Black Riot, like all those huge records were made on these 2 pieces of equipment with a keyboard. And a PA mixer. The knobs were missing because he found it in the garbage, you know what I'm saying, pretty much. And that's what he had. But those records had a sound sonically. He figured out a way how to make the best of it. So me being around and actually cutting school to go to his house and watch him work, I picked up on that stuff. So when I got my hands on the SP 1200, we had more seconds. You know what I mean? There was 3.5 seconds per pad instead of 1 second. So you know, you had to make do. You sped up the records to get more time into the machine, and you got busy that way. But that's the core thing, and that always stood with me. You know what I mean? And then I took that when we worked together on all our stuff, and then till now, you know, I still use the same heads, you know, the same concept, you know.
Fascinating. And for you, was there who was your mentor, you think? I mean, the other thing that strikes me, I mean, it was quite hard to make music and DJ back in the 80s. It was expensive. I mean, you talk about primitive equipment.
No, we're talking about, when I went into the studio, we're talking about $2-3 million studios. Yeah. So, you know, here it is, kids, you know, we putting together equipment to try to make some tunes, you know what I mean? So, but it also gave us a sound because it was gritty, it was dirty. You know, nothing sounds like those records, you know.
It's quite hard to work in a partnership sometimes with kind of egos and taste. Did you two, was there a philosophy between you? Were there rules when you got together? Did you know when you first started making music together?
Well, you know, I'm pretty easy to get along with. You know, when I met Kenny, we just hit it off. You know, we came into the studio. I mean, I had already been a big club DJ in New York. I played all the, you know, 2,500 to 4,000 people every Friday and Saturday between 85 and 90. So, you know, I started getting a lot of remixes, and it was more in the freestyle world. It was Latin hip hop and freestyle music that I made over maybe 100, 150 records, something like that. And so by that time, I had already been seasoned in the studio. So when I got this album deal, and Kenny came in, we just hit it off. I really invited him so that I could remix this record for him. And I went to his studio. It was just a little room with the Akai, right? A
lot of records,
tons of records, but these like 3 pieces. And it was right there that we just got together, and it started from there. And when we went into the studio is when we really got acquainted with each other. So it was really easy. I mean, he would listen to me, I would listen to him, and then if I felt strongly about something, he would follow it. Same on the other side, if he felt strongly about something.
I think the most important thing to answer your question, though, is we came up and said, look, if you don't like something, no questions asked, erase it. Let's move on. Same thing, vice versa. If I'm not going to take it to heart, let's move on. Let's make the best possible record or whatever we're working on as we can. And that was it, and that we stuck by it. That's it.
Yeah, and there was a lot of trust. Right. You know what I'm saying? If he came up, and there was a lot of complimenting, because I played keyboards on a lot of the early Masters at Work records from 90 to 96, a lot of those dubs, and Kenny was doing the beats. So when we worked together, it was like he was on a drum machine, I was on a keyboard. I play a bass line, I play a chord progression, and we had a groove. He may have come up with a syncopated beat, then I would follow that. So, it really worked well when we were together in the studios, and we used to do a lot of product. In like one night, we could do like 4 or 5 tracks very easily.
Yeah, I was going to come on to that because just researching it a bit before I sat down to talk to you today. I mean, something happened. I don't know whether you discovered Red Bull before it got invented around 1992, 93, but your discography is just insane. Particularly in '93, because not only is Mastered at Work like really arriving as a brand, people didn't really use that word back then. But then you got all these other things going on. I mean, you had so many names. All the tracks on Cutting and Strictly and Tommy Boy. And what were you thinking? What was the thought process then in creating all these different identities?
Well, it was a great time because after I had done all the clubs from 85 to 90, I took a break from freestyle music because I had just felt I went as far as I could go with the music, and I wanted to make a lot of house music. So at the same time, I was mixing a lot of Todd Terry's records. And if you look at his early credits, you'll see a lot of records mixed by Little Louie Vega, whatever. And he said, look, I'm doing so much music. I need help to just mix these records and get them out. So I said, I'll mix them, sure. I loved his music. So I was doing a lot of that, but then I said, I want to make some house records, And I met Kenny right at the right time. And by that time, when I had left the freestyle, the big clubs in New York doing that, I wanted to do more of what Kenny and I were doing in the clubs. And that's when I met Don Welch and Barbara Tucker, who were throwing parties in New York. And we started together doing a few parties, and we ended up at the Sound Factory Bar, which was a seminal club in New York City that Frankie Knuckles also played at. May he rest in peace. He played on Fridays, I played on Wednesdays. So we had that club there, and at the same time we're making all these records, we're playing all these records freshly made out of the studio. Next thing you know, the club was packed. There was a lot going on with music at that time, with house music, and we were really vibrant. We were so inspired. I mean, I would make records with Kenny and call Gladys Pizarro, who was at Strictly Rhythm, and Michael Weiss, who owns Nervous Records, at 4 a.m. and say, yo, who likes this record? And to this day, like Michael White still says, yo, I'm so upset I passed on Beautiful People by Barbara Tucker.
At 4 a.m.
That's what we would do. We would just call them. Everybody in New York was really excited. And you had in one club, in our club where we were at every week, it was, of course, Kenny Todd, Armand Van Helden, Eric Murillo. I mean, it was the cream of the crop of New York City, hanging out, making records, bring it into us to play, and then that was it.
They'd almost call it like a singers, like you had a music makers social club basically. So much has been written and said about the Paradise Garage in the late '80s, going into the end of the '80s. Maybe not enough has been talked about the kind of that era of the tunnel and the Sound Factory and the Sound Factory Bar. Just for the people in the room, just describe for starters what the Sound Factory Bar was like.
Sound Factory Bar, you had a top of the line sound system. It was designed by Steve Dash. Frankie Knuckles played there on Fridays first. He was there for a year before I got there. And when Don Walsh and Barbara Tucker invited me to play at the Underground Network parties, we did Wednesday nights. And in mind, we had to do a night that brought the industry together. And whether you're in an entertainment business, you could be in a Broadway play, you could be a DJ, you could be a dancer, whatever. You're coming to hang out on Wednesday nights as well with the New York crowd. And that was the thing. It was just a whole incredible scene. You had the Shelter happening with Timmy Regisford as well at the same time, and lots of other parties going on. Of course, the Tunnel, which dates back even in the late 80s and stuff into the early 90s, I believe. And, there was just a lot of energy going on, creative energy going on between a lot of people there. And we all knew each other, right? We were all hanging out.
Yeah, and also, one of the reasons why there was so many different records coming out with different artist names is because we couldn't sign the same records to the same label. So we wanted to make an impact. We wanted 4 records out that Friday, so when it hits the world, we're just killing it, you know what I mean? So that was the whole mindset, and that's another thing I learned from Todd too, was just put out under different names, you know what I mean? Different group names. And you could have records out the same weekend because it's just coming under a different label or whatever. So
you'd make a track, something like the Hard Drive EP, play it out, and then almost it would be a couple of phone calls or who was in the room that night.
Yeah,
it's a lottery.
crazy.
It's good. It's creative.
Yeah, I mean, it was. We were putting out so much music. The remixes were getting a lot of play. The record stores, you would have Masters at Work sections, and we were like, wow, okay, well, we need to make some records from scratch, And we started doing that a lot, and we said, how are we going to put these out? So then next thing you know, you had the Bucketheads, you had Hard Drive, you had Bass Tone, Soul Fusion. There was just so many.
The other thing with what was really important about the club was it was friendly competition. Yeah. So you had everybody, all the producers that came, or all the artists, brought Louie records first. So you're there firsthand every Wednesday listening to, all right, what he got? All right, what does the Roger S. got? All right, what does Eric Miller got? Mood to Swing, whoever, So it's like, all right, I got to top that now. I got to make a hotter beat than that now. So it was just like this competitive thing that was going on while he was playing all this music, which was really, really cool too, at the same time, because it kept everybody on their toes,
Yeah, it's great times. I don't want to get too reminiscent, but we could do with someone that again, particularly back in New York City now, where the club scene's still fairly patchy, but pretty good in Brooklyn. But you start traveling then, because your name is getting out there. You start coming to the UK. You played at the Ministry very early on. What did you make of the Ministry at the beginning? Because that was the UK's effort to kind of recreate the Paradise Garage.
Well, first of all, when I first came to the UK, it was '89, and it was my manager at the time was Patrick Moxey from Ultra Records, and he's the one who first brought me out to the UK. And the first club I went to, you played at, and it was a place called the WAG, right?
That's right, yeah.
And I couldn't believe it, because Dancing in Outer Space by Atmosphere is like a dancer's record in New York. I'm talking Baby Powder on the Floor, like a real dancer's record, and he was playing it. And I said, no way, this is not happening in London right now.
We hit it off.
And that was it. I met everybody. I first came out and played for Norman J, and then Energy and Sunrise, and it was incredible. In one night you had Pete Tong, Paul Oakenfold, Carl Cox, like everybody at the same time, all together, like in some farm way out. 10,000 people, you wouldn't even believe there's anything happening there when you're driving there.
The M25, the raves, yeah.
But from there is Ministry of Sound. We first came as Masters at Work, and I think Little Lewis was playing too, right? Was Little Lewis playing that night?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not sure he would remember.
I'm sorry, I can't even tell you.
I remember that Little Lewis was playing. We was all like, "Wow, Little Lewis," because French Kiss, Little Lewis in the World, best album of all time, house music, So we were in there, and I guess everybody was expecting masters at work because we had done so many records at the time. So it was like every DJ from London was in that room and just waiting for us to.
What I do remember is being up north and then doing a gig up north for 3 hours and then driving down and getting to Ministry at 9 in the morning and starting at that time, 9:30, 10 o'clock to 12 or something like that. It was just crazy,
Yeah,
That's what I do remember.
It was Lynn Cosgrave, right? She was our agent, Lynn Cosgrave. That's right.
I saw one great quote of yours about one of your early visits to the UK that you couldn't believe it, that you went up north and it was bloody cold, but nobody was wearing any clothes.
Yeah, all the girls were naked.
That'll be Manchester and Liverpool. And what about Ibiza? When was your first Ibizan experience? Do you remember that?
I first played in Pasha, and I just remember the DJ booth being on the dance floor. It was on the dance floor, yeah.
Back in the day. Let's talk about Nu Yorican Soul, because how did that come about at the beginning? Because, the return, I guess, to your roots in terms of live instrumentation. When did you sit down together and decide to take that on?
Well, after we did all those dubs and worked with all those artists and all those remixes, we got to a point where we started to incorporate live musicians into the remixes, because like Louis said earlier, we first started with just the drum machines and the keyboards and the synths. And we wanted to just open up a little bit. And that's when we got percussions in, started doing live bass, live horns. And then once we exhaust that, that's when it was like, all right, now let's try to do something bigger than that. And that's how the whole Nu Yorican thing came about. And then, we did this song called The Nervous Track, which we got influence from Southport. Because when we went to Southport, Weekender, which was a festival in England, and they had different rooms, in each of the rooms they had all these different styles of music. And
it's kind of still celebrating the jazz funk era, really, which is kind of
it was jazz funk. It was they sold records, which was amazing. We went there and bought
Soul
records.
Trader.
Yeah, it was crazy, So you had all these different rooms, and I happened to walk in. Well, we actually walked into a room, and it was all jazz dancers. And I never forget, they were playing this Art Blakey record, which was really fast. It was like 162 beats per minute. Everybody was dressed in suits. They had shoes. It was just amazing. And just the dancing alone, of me just watching the dancing, I created this beat in my head, and that's what created the broken beat. So I was the first one to really do that style. And that was the Nervous Track, and like, Louis said before, he called Michael Weiss one night, and that's how Nu Yorican Soul started. We did one more single, but then it was just like, all right, let's take this to the complete level, just let's go for it. And that's how we started to put it together, piece it together little by little.
Yeah, and also there was one thing though Kenny's not bringing up here is he said, yo, Louis, man, I'm tired of making house beats. I need to get out that 4 on the floor. I said, well, then get out the 4 on the floor. And he had that jazz record in his head, and actually, I think it was like 3 or 4 drummers that you sampled, right, on that record, beats.
It was this. It was a drum sessions record, which there was 2 drummers, and one drummer played on the left, and the other drummer played on the right, and it was panned hard, but they were complementing each other. So I dug in there, and going back to the hip hop roots where you sample certain things from the left side or the right or whatever, that came into play, and I found some loops on one side and I found some loops on the other and put it together. Pretty much.
I was wondering where the jazz and the jazz funk influence came from. I remember going to New York back in the day where, going to vinyl or you go to that section where there was all they'd be called sample records now, but they weren't. They were just rare groove compilations, but like 3 tracks aside with just breaks basically, right? Mm-hmm. The Bob James and all that stuff. So,
absolutely.
But when you get to make Nu Yorican Soul, it is like the who's who of the kind of jazz funk era. Was that something you'd had to kind of learn about at that time, or was that were you already into stuff like Roy Ayers and Patty Austin and Fela Kuti and stuff like that? Because I know you signed to Talking Loud and Giles was there. And
Yeah, well, you know what, Giles actually was a key influence in Nu Yorican Soul, because when he heard the Nervous track, he was like, Louis, man, you guys should do an album for that. And I said, well, we are. And we already had a relationship with a few artists. We had worked with Tito Puente, Eddie Palmieri, from the Mark Anthony album. And of course, Jocelyn Brown, India, we had done records with already. And Roy Ayers, we met at the Shelter, you know, one night when he was performing. And we asked him to get down, and he said, no problem. And we had those 5. From there, we said we want to, you know, keep taking it to the next level. And once we met Tommy the Puma through Morris Bernstein at Giant Step, because we were signed in the U.S. through Giant Step and in the U.K. Through Talking Loud. So once we met Tommy the Puma, may he rest in peace, he introduced us to George Benson. And, you know, from there, we were like, wow, we didn't know where to go from there. This is it, you know, and everything else just filled in. It was really beautiful. So the idea of Nu Yorican Soul was to give you the New York experience and what we experienced growing up, you know, from being kids all the way until
so
present.
many flavors, like the Donald Byrd flavor. I mean, how do you come about? I was listening to it earlier today. Hadn't heard it for a few years, but where in the hell did you get I'm the Black Gold of the Sun? I mean, still that timeless piece of music.
Yeah, that was a joint that actually was funny. A funny story.
Should have played it in the room, actually, but we didn't line it up.
Giles had invited us to his house, you know. So he's like, all right, we're in town. We're going to come through. Come through at this time. So we're like, okay, he's going to be free. We knock on the door, ring the bell. Nobody answers. Knock some more, nobody answers. Finally, one of his guys opens up, and he's like, come in. We go in. He's like, the room is downstairs. They were watching football, his whole crew. Like, they was like, you know what? Do what you got to do. We're watching football. Fan. That's it. You know.
They didn't even care we were there. Man.
They didn't. We could have took all the records home with us. You know what I mean? It didn't even matter. So we went downstairs and we looked through a little bit, and then he finally came down, and he was like, I want to show you this record. You know. And he showed us that record, and to find out it was Charles Stepney who produced Earth, Wind & Fire, who, you know, did Ramsey Lewis, and it's deep. It's a deep record because it was he produced a psych rock record. You know what I mean? And this is a soul guy who produced a lot of soul records. You know, so when we heard the record, it was we loved it from the very beginning. It was just like, all right, we want to do this over.
Got to ask you this question because it just happens to be 20 years since that album. Why did you never make another one? If it was that well received.
While we were making it, we wasn't thinking about touring.
Right.
It was very expensive to tour the record because of all the names and who was involved, and, you know, we didn't feel it was appropriate to ask these musicians and artists for favors to do shows for us, for, you know, because at that time it was probably $150,000 show, which was unheard of at that time for a dance record. You know what I mean? Pretty much nobody was going to pay that money at that time. You know, now DJs are getting that for 2 hours. You know what I mean? But that's what happened. You know, it's just we just hit a brick wall, and it was just like, wow, we can't tour this record. You know what I mean? So, and then we try to find someone that was able to capture all those vibes, an artist that was able to capture all those vibes to record the second one. So then we can tour it, put a band together, but it just never happened.
Do you think it could happen? I mean, there seems to be a fascination with the classics now. I mean, I've been working with an orchestra. You know, Mike Pickering's been working with an orchestra. And it's there seems to be there's something in the air about the kind of legacy of where we all come from, that people are interested in it again.
We would love to do it. Yeah. It's just, you know, right? Just finding that artist that can bring that front, you know, to the forefront.
I mean, you guys never stop working, but they're carrying on from my point. There does seem to be a bit of a renaissance now with the old crew from back in the day, with Kerry Chandler being adopted into the DC-10 family. MK came back a few years ago. Octave One seemed to be hotter than ever. You guys at Dope Villa on Friday playing with, you know, arguably two of the hottest acts in the world in terms of underground, in terms of the way they're respected, Martinez Brothers and Dixon. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I think it's great that the younger generation is reaching out. The promoters are reaching out. Clubs are reaching out that cater to this audience and to accept us in and for them to look up to us the way they do is really a wonderful thing. It really shows the appreciation and for a lot of the hard work that we've done over the years because we have been a main contributor to house music. You know what I'm saying? So you know what I mean.
Thank you.
I mean, one of the things that first struck me when kind of Luciano really started to kind of take off in Ibiza and Villa Lobos was that they were playing like Eric Cuppa dubs. They were playing your B-sides of Masters at Works records. The track, those tracks that never went up on streaming services. You had to have the vinyl. So it's good to see that that's now getting recognised. Have you ever played with the Martinez brothers before, Dixon?
That was our first time. We know the Martinez brothers, of course. They're our little brothers. We love them.
I mean, I was going to say they are like the
we work with them.
Work.
We're doing stuff with them, and it's really exciting because I've watched them grow in the last 10 years, and I'm really proud of them. So now, I think for many years we've always talked about doing something, and now it's finally come, and we're going to do it tomorrow at Adult Villa. So, and Dixon, I heard he had requested to play with us, so that was kind of cool, and we're looking forward to tomorrow.
It's amazing. And do you, bring us up to date with what you guys are doing musically? Are you working together in the studio? Are you?
There's a little of everything. Like it's always been. Like it's always been, you know what I mean? Okay. So, we, in the 90s, we did this, one of our names was Ken Lou. More on the tracky side of things, sample-based. So last year, we was here for a long period of time. We got in the studio in Ibiza, and we started working on some tracks. And we're gonna finish it this year. You know what I'm saying? From last year to this year, we just been running around crazy, but we said, look, we gotta finish these tunes. The timing is now, everything's revolved around, it's went around in full circle, and it's time to get busy again, pretty much, and that's what we're gonna do. We have our separate labels, we do our separate projects, but we're gonna hit that hard again.
You've been doing some interesting collaborations as well on your own.
Yeah. I got into the studio with Joseph Capriati, and which was very interesting because he's from Naples, but his roots are our music. So
he was telling me yesterday, growing up, going to Angels of Love, and his only way was all.
Yeah, he was like 13, 14, coming to hear us. So his influences are our music. So what I did was I said, okay, well. Come to New York, we'll work in my studio. He came to work in my studio, and then I said, why don't you, we talked about playing at the club at Cielo at Roots. Then I said, wow, okay, how can we meet in the same place musically? Because, we wanted it to make sense. Obviously, he's a great techno DJ, and I do what I do. So I said, okay, he wants to play vinyl. I said, so why don't you play your roots? Whatever you think musically of your roots, that'll be your set for the night. And we play together. And it was amazing. It was a great night. We came up with a great track, and now the rest is history. I guess he wants to use it for his album, and then and also last year I got together with the Martinez brothers, and we started creating in the studio. So we got some surprises coming up.
Watch this space. A couple more questions from me, but I'm going to open it up to the audience. Just on technology, we touched on the kind of excellence of the sound systems back in the day, and you guys were, I think all us DJs from Europe all used to come over to New York just fascinated by, the Uri mixers and all the early technology. What do you think of the setup now, and how do you actually play together? Are you using vinyl still? Are you CDs? Are you sticks? Are you computers?
The setup is pretty much the same. The only thing that got, switched up was from turntables to CDJs. Because what started to happen was, you were traveling all over the place, and you would get to a club, and the tone arms were loose, or they wasn't tracking. So it got to a point where we just like, we have to find something. And then the 800 came out first, the baby Pioneer, and then we moved up from that, and then they got better and better and better and better. So, when we play together, it's two setups. I go into him, or he comes into me, either or. One of us controls the booth, but we're live together, and in the booth we're hearing the same thing. So we're able to interact with each other that way. We're not just
so you're two separate mixers.
Two separate mixers, but I'm going, like I said, either I'm going into him or he's coming into me. Yeah. So we're hearing what's being blended together at the same time, and then it's going out. Okay. You know?
Yeah, so it's multiple things happening at the same time.
You're on the Play One now. How's that been?
Yeah. I'm a rotary guy. I've played on a Uri for many years and the V6 Allen and Heath, and then comes this Model 1 mixer that,
it's like he's on sliders now. Wow. Because he would never do that. So
I know that was the number one rule a long time ago. So, but I just got used to the rotary. I love the feel of the rotary. There's nothing like it. But when I used the Model 1 last year in Ibiza, I went to a studio to check it out. I was invited to hear it, and it sounded amazing. I couldn't believe the way it sounded. I said, listen, I got to use this on my Wednesday night in New York. I said, let's arrange to have it there. So when I put it on at Cielo, at Roots, my party in New York, just random people coming up. It sounds so good in here tonight. Like, it sounds really good. I said, wow. And I was listening to it. It sounded so warm, I love the filters. I love everything. I said, you know what? I'm going to start using this a little more. And then it's funny because I have a partner who plays in Roots, Kevin Edge, and he's like, I got to use this mixer again? I said, yeah. And then he started using it, and he started liking it. And I said, okay. And then I started seeing other people getting interested in it. So, it's a great solid mixer. It made me make the change. That's a heavy change to make.
It's just funny seeing him do this. Right. Instead of this,
But, I get to, especially when I'm playing with him, like tomorrow, you'll hear a lot of things riding on top of each other and things happening at the same time. And the filters allow you to filter out, bass lines and just be almost a voice with some highs. And, you could do so much. And then I had to figure out how to have the isolator, because I love using the isolator, of course. So I called the Dope Real guy. He's one of the guys who makes a great isolator from Japan. And asked him to make me one with a booth control. And I had to manipulate the way of using it because it only has one return. There's no sends on that mixer and just one return. So it's all coming out. I have the booth coming out through the isolator, and I'm able to use the isolator now. So
I wonder if Play One though you're doing that. Or you end up putting it through a Pioneer, so it's all complicated. Anyway, watch this space tomorrow. A lot of aspiring DJs and music makers come to the IMS. I'm involved as a mentor of the Burn residency. In terms of your philosophy for DJing and making music today, is there any advice you would give to those that want to follow in your footsteps? I mean, what do you think? Is there anything that's lost from the past that you would stress? Some of the skills that you'd like to see return. I don't know.
I think it's just the style development. You know what I mean? I think, we're at a place where we pretty much lost the record stores. There is a lot more record stores now, whereas, we went to stores,
hung out.
We picked out records, we hung out, it made our identity. You know what I'm saying? Whereas today, is very few places to get music. You know what I'm saying? So you tend to hear a lot of the same records over and over again. So I think it's about creating your identity and not be afraid to bring the identity out. Don't worry about what people are gonna say, because you're gonna create your lane. You know what I mean? You just got to go for it and do it. And not be scared. Because we were doing everything from here. Whatever came out on them beats, whatever came out in the machine, was from the heart. It wasn't so much that I was listening to what was going on around me, but it was, like I said before, it was competitive. I wanted to be better. I wanted to do something different. It just kept my mind growing and creating these different patterns in my head to create them when we were doing these mixes and stuff. So it's about just, branching out, where I know in Europe, you come from a different school. You learned how to program beats in a computer. So it's a different feel. I think if you guys try to use some hardware, it's going to create a different experience for you while you're creating, So that's the main thing, is just to try to be original and be your own person. And again, you can be influenced, because we all have been, we've all loved the record or loved a certain DJ of what he did, and we get inspired. But it's also to get inspired, but create your own vibe.
Do you embrace new technology when you go back in the studio, or do you still do a lot of what you used to do back in the day?
I'm a fiend, but
yeah, of course. Of course we embrace it. I mean, I changed to that Model 1, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing.
And you're not using 1 second samplers, no doubt. Yeah.
No, but in the studio, yes. I mean, I love the vintage sound.
I was going to say, you strike me as a purist, so you're not
Yeah.
recording on a 24 track anymore, though. No?
We own a lot of original, Fender Rhodes and Wurlitzers and everything, but we also use plugins and stuff. When I'm with Kenny, especially, he pulls them out. I play on the controller, and then that's it. I mean, I love sounds that come out on the plugin tip.
It's different, It's what you're trying to capture that day. You know what I mean? We both have studios. I've pretty much collected every drum machine, every analog synth, and it's at the studio. And if we want to do a old style kind of track, we pull those joints out. You know what I'm saying? If we're gonna be in the box, then we stay in the box and do it in plugins. But I am gonna say there is some pretty incredible plugins today. You know what I mean? That's a whole nother world right there, that you can just get lost in just tweaking sounds,
I mean, I think we've always loved the combination of both worlds, you know what I mean? I love producing artists, singers, having Lisa Fisher and Cindy Mizell in the studio, there's nothing like it, you know what I mean? But also working on some new plugin with an incredible sound can inspire a song, a track or two or three, so.
Wonderful careers you both had. You still seem as hungry as ever. I mean, what do you hold most dear? Being who you are, doing what you do.
Well, for me, it's making people smile, man. That's what we do. You look on the dance floor, you see people laughing, crying, releasing, and feeling good, and you're the cause of that. That's what we do. And for me, that's the ultimate feeling. That makes me feel like we've accomplished something really good.
Just the love of music, you know what I'm saying? When you get up in the morning, music gets on, it's on, and throughout the day it's on in the car, it's on in the hotel, it's on everywhere, and you're able to share this music and pass it on, you know what I mean? That's what it's about, that's why I started a reissue label to kind of pass music on and pass on soul tunes and funk tunes to the younger generation, you know what I mean? Just the love of it, period, I always say, like, I wish I could just be in a time machine and just go like this and end up in a different country so I don't have to deal with the flights.
Traveling, yeah.
You know what I mean? Just, and the airports and the security and take everything out. If it was like that, forget it. It would be crazy, No
Absolutely.
Stopping it.
It's been fantastic to talk to you. Have we got time for a couple of questions? Yeah, a couple of questions from the floor. Okay, yeah, over here, come on.
Hi, my name's Eleni. I just want to say I saw you a couple of years ago at 51st State Festival, and I thought you were amazing, and everything Louis talks about the release, the energy, completely felt that. I love your music, especially the 90s and the stuff that you did with India. What I want to know is, how did you come across India? She's such a phenomenal vocalist that always stands out in my mind.
Well, when I played at clubs in New York in the late 80s, there were like a lot of talent in the room. And India and Mark Anthony were two young 14, 15-year-olds who were hanging out in the clubs. And they, 5 in the morning when we're all leaving, whole group of us, you had them singing outside, just to all of us. And that was it. That's how we were childhood friends. You grow up together and you write songs, boom, you go in the studio. We started making records and we started bringing in our friends, and that's how it happened.
Got to start that Wednesday night club again. Down here.
Hello, I'm Nita.
Hi.
Hi. One of the other things synonymous with Musters at Work is your incredibly cool logo and the silhouettes. How did it come about?
That was actually a friend of mine from Brooklyn. His name is Cab One. He was actually a graffiti writer. He came up with the that logo. And actually, the original logo was a reel-to-reel, and it said Masters at Work first. And then when me and Louie linked up and we needed art for the first album, the album on Cutting Records, it was actually the two heads with like a reel-to-reel and a keyboard. And then when we started more records, we put the heads together. And then that's been the staple since then, pretty much.
I love the anniversary editions that you did, the gold and the silver with the logo on. It's just fab.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions? One over there? No.
Yeah, it's not really a question, but I'm euphonic from South Africa, and I just want to big the two guys up, because being a South African, coming from South Africa, and being a DJ in South Africa, those two guys are the reason why the majority of South African DJs do what they do, and I don't think they get the respect that they deserve. But from a South African point of view, just want to big them up, because there's a lot of DJs in South Africa. The DJ market is massive, and those two guys are the reason why most people do what they do in South Africa. So big up to you guys, man. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. That's what's up.
Thank you. Well, I just want to give credit to a friend. His name is Greg Maloka, who runs Kaya FM, and there was a station called YFM in '97, and '99, I believe, is when the first time when I went out there, and it was he who played our music to the people in Johannesburg and broke the music to the crowd. So by the time we got there, everybody knew our music, and I guess a lot of the young were inspired, and it was really beautiful. I will never forget the first time I stepped foot in Johannesburg. So thank you very much for recognizing.
I think that's a good time to. We've got a special award for you guys, actually. A little bit. I think, this is your life. Do you want to say a few words? Yeah. Kenny and Louie, Masters at Work, you are the recipients of this year's Pioneer Award. Pioneer.
Thank you. So, thank you so much.
Yeah. Pioneer winners 2017. They're playing tomorrow night at Dope Villa with the Martinez brothers and Dixon. Give it up for Louie Vega and Kenny Dope Gonzalez.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.